Yeah. Hello, friends. Today I'll be talking about certain things which are so simple and which we encounter it in our day to day lives, but we don't even realize it. So, research per se is more about observing things around you. Research is all about looking at things and finding ideas. So, there are a lot of things which change over a period of time and we don't even notice them. But if we start noticing them, then those are real simple ones in which ideas can be generated. So there is a big cultural change which has happened over the past few years. The first change which has happened has been the change in the mindset of the people. Earlier, there was a thought process that borrowing or taking money on loans was something which was not so good. But there was a change and people started accepting that taking loan is good, and that is what resulted in many of the housing finance companies really doing extremely well in the stock market. So there was a cultural change that if you are first, the thought process was that if you have money, you go and buy a home. Now the cultural change is that even if you don't have money, you can take loans and then you can go and buy your home. That is what resulted in many companies like HDFC, Canfin Homes, Repco Homes, Guru Finance. All of them did extremely well over the last 15 years and they have delivered super normal returns. The now big change which is happening is that this mindset is going down at even low levels. So there are people who are below the average line and they have also started to borrow. So this is giving opportunity for many of the microfinance companies and they will try and replicate what has happened for the housing finance companies. So the cultural change which was there in the urban class, now that cultural change is happening even in the rural parts of the country. And so many companies which are in this business of microfinance, something like an Ujjivan or something which is in Muthoot Finance or Mannapuram Finance, these are the ideas which will do well, the way in which housing finance have done extremely well over the last 15 years. Another cultural change which we notice is the way in which garment purchasing was done. Earlier, people would go to one small retail shop, and from what is available in the shop, people would go and buy their garments. Or else, maybe they would get a tailor, and they would tailor would come and he would get your clothes stitched. Now that entire concept has changed to branded purchasing. So you see people going and buying Van Heusen shirts or an Arrow shirt or many other such branded garments just off the shelf. So earlier people were maybe buying garments at time of festivals of Diwali or Eid, etc. Now buying garments has become very common. So that's a big cultural change which has resulted in companies like Arvind or maybe even Pantaloons, etc. doing extremely well in the market. So that's a branded purchasing which is the cultural change which has happened over the last few years and the companies which have benefited from that. One more big change is earlier the woman in the house was limited herself or had actually limited herself to being in the home itself. And there were many products which gave her comfort. So now the woman in the house is no longer there in the house, she is out there working in your offices as your colleague. And the products which make her life comfortable, something like a washing machine or something like a mixer, juicer, grinder, vacuum cleaners, all these products over the last 10-15 years have really done extremely well. So there are companies which have benefited significantly, whether it's a TTK Prestige or a Symphony. Again, it was a cultural change in the society overall that the lady was no longer there in your home, she was out there working, and products which made her life easy actually delivered supernormal returns in the stock market. So the cultural change which was there was that the woman was given good comfortable products and the market for that products actually shot up. Right now we are also seeing that similar thing is happening in terms of packaged foods. So there are companies which are making packaged foods. Earlier it was more of a thought process that food would be made at home and it was consumed by people. Now you have packaged foods and there are children who are given that. So there's a huge market which will open up for the packaged foods going forward. Another thing which is happening is again on the telecom side. Earlier phones or mobiles were used only for voice. Now voice is no longer something which is driving the sale of phones or your services. It is more of data. So the migration or the cultural change which has happened for using telephone for only talking to using telephone more for data is a big cultural change, and there are companies which will do extremely well, whether it's a Reliance Jio or whether there are other players who will be fighting for their market share in terms of Vodafone, Idea, etc. So the cultural change is that mobile is no longer for talk, but it is for data as well. And that's something which we should understand and try to capitalize on. So another cultures which I think are emerging big time. The first one is clearly in the field of education. People are willing to pay any amount of money for the education of their kids. So if you think, the kind of amount that you would have spent on your education in your entire life, today maybe you are paying a similar amount for your small kid who is going in a play school or a nursery or something like a junior KG, etc. So the willingness or the capability of people to pay to those companies are the ones which will really emerge in future. So businesses in the field of education, something like a Z-Learn, something like an MT Educare, something like a Navneet Publication, all these companies have extremely strong future because while paying the fees or while paying the product price, you do not question those companies. These companies have the flexibility to charge any amount of money and they make humongous profits, and those are the ones which will do very well in the future. Another space which is again a cultural change is in terms of aviation. So just on a lighter note, earlier there were times when if people would actually travel in a plane, they would keep the tag attached to your luggage till the time they would travel next time. But now traveling in planes or aircrafts is no longer considered a luxury. It is more of a necessity to save time, etc. Even today, the kind of number of people who are actually traveling airlines is not even 10% of India's population. But that's an opportunity for all these companies, whether it's a SpiceJet, whether it's an Indigo, whether it is Jet Airways, all of them have a huge market, and the change in the culture that, okay, it's okay to travel in aircrafts, that's the change in mindset because they've become affordable also, and it's also the rise in the standard of living. All of those factors give these stocks tremendous opportunity over the years to come. So one which I mentioned was education, the second which I'm saying is on aviation. Another one which will emerge in the future is going to be tourism. So there are people who would earlier do one tourist spot destination in couple of years, or tourism was essentially linked to your pilgrimage travels. Now that is no longer the case. People want to do tourism across country, across world. In fact, there are weekends on which all these hotels and all get sold out. So there are people who are spending more on tourism, and the companies there which will benefit will be Mahindra Holidays or a Thomas Cook or a Cox and Kings. These are the ones which will do very well on account of the change in the mindset of the people. So people were not spending first on tourism earlier. Now they are eagerly or willing to spend a lot of amount on tourism. Another space is of insurance. As the standard of living grows, people require more safety. So earlier there were times when people were thinking that paying premium was a waste, but the kind of healthcare expenses which are coming in, people are insuring themselves at the outset. So insurance is one such big opportunity which we think where there is a lot of fee income, and they will do very well. So that is another space apart from aviation, apart from tourism, apart from education. The one is insurance, which will do very well because again of the cultural change. And lastly, one more space which we think is going to emerge is going to be in the field of e-commerce. Earlier, people would go to shop, spend time and purchase things. Now purchasing is 24/7. You can even in the night at 10 o'clock or before sleeping, you can go on a Flipkart or purchase your products. So this, you don't have to spend time going to the shop. Goods will be delivered to your home. That's the kind of change in the mindset of the people. So observing the things around you give you the opportunity, give you the simple way of doing research, simple ways of identifying stocks, and change is something which is going to be constant. Every time it will evolve. The things which make your life comfortable, things where people are willing to pay, these are the kind of structural changes, these are the kind of opportunities. So I think a thought to share with you is that observe the cultural change, observe the shift, and that is what research is all about, that is what idea finding is all about, and that is where you can invest and make money. So happy investing from my side. I am Sunil Shah, the head of research for Access Securities. Thank you very much for the listening.